In today's video, we're going to be taking our first look at the 2020 NHL Draft and its top prospects. We're going to be running the Draft Simulator to see who would be picking in the top 10 based on the current standings as of today and what players they would end up selecting based on the current draft rankings. We'll jump into 2020 Draft coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned today, we're going to be playing around with the 2020 NHL Draft Simulator and taking a look at some of their top prospects and who would end up going where as of today at least. Now, of course, this is going to change numerous times throughout the year as the NHL standings change, as well as the NHL Prospects draft rankings change as they continue to develop throughout the current season. So I've just run the Draft Simulator through tankathon.com to come up with the current top 10 list, and let's take a look at how that worked out and what prospects they're going to end up with. Now, one thing to keep in mind as well, it's going to be very interesting with this 2020 NHL Draft, is that the Ottawa Senators currently have 2 first-round picks, and as of today, both are projected to be in the Draft Lottery. Of course, they have their own selection, plus they have the selection that was originally belonging to the San Jose Sharks, which they obtained in the Erik Karlsson trade. Of course, the Sharks are not doing nearly as well as they were anticipating or hoping to do, and right now they're at the bottom of the Western Conference, so that draft pick very well could turn out to be a pretty high pick. Of course, the Ottawa Senators did not have their first-round pick last year, so having 2 that could end up so high could certainly make up for that and help them continue this rebuild to be well on track. So let's dive in and take a look at how the top 10 worked out. The number 10 selection ended up going to the Dallas Stars. Now, of course, they're another team who's not meeting expectations this year, and as of right now would be in the draft lottery. We have them selecting 6-foot center iceman from Quebec, HENDRIX LAPIERRE. Now, LAPIERRE is a very intelligent player who can create a lot of offense. He's got a great shot, pretty solid playmaker and all around, pretty solid hockey player, and certainly be a big help to the Stars lineup. The number 9 selection would belong to the New York Rangers, who have a ton of prospects in their system after rebuilding over the past couple of years. But again, another team that with all the prospects they have and all the moves they've made were expected to perform better so far this year. But as of right now, we'll end up with another lottery pick. We have them selecting German-born forward Tim STUTZLE, who's got excellent speed and quickness. He's a natural center iceman, but often plays a wing. He's got a high offensive upside for sure, and would certainly be a big help to the Rangers group of forwards. The number 8 selection ended up going to the Chicago Blackhawks, where they selected the top D in the draft, Jamie DRYSDELL. Now, DRYSDELL's an elite skater who has the potential to be a power play quarterback at the NHL level. He's got all kinds of offensive upside. He's certainly doing a lot of great things in the Ontario Hockey League, and is one of these players in the draft that pretty much is a sure bet, in my opinion, to make the NHL. Would certainly be a big help. Now, of course, keep in mind as well that these selections are certainly based on draft rankings. They're not necessarily what I feel is the best fit or the most logical selection for the team based on, positional need. Of course, we'll get into that later in the season as we continue to do these drafts periodically throughout the season. Right now, I just find it's a little bit too early to go with that, as a lot of these teams' prospects are going to continue to develop, rosters are going to change, and I guess we will see how things are as we get closer to the draft. If you've been following this channel for some time, we've done a lot of these over the years, and generally we get into more positional need and that type of thing later on, closer to next offseason. But for right now, we have the Hawks taking DRYSDELL with their first round selection. Now, the number 7 selection ended up going to the New Jersey Devils, and they're going to take the top goalie in the draft, YAROSLAV ASKAROV, who is a Russian goaltender. ASKAROV is by far the top goalie in this class. A Russian goaltender draws some comparison to Tampa Bay Lightning goalie Andrei Vasilevsky. There's a few teams in the top 10 who could really use a top goaltending prospect to really solidify things here down the road, and the New Jersey Devils are certainly one of them. Their goaltending tandem this year has not really worked out, and is a big part of the reason why they're once again in the draft lottery. The number 6 selection belongs to the Minnesota Wild, and they select Finnish center iceman Anton Lundell. Now, the Wild are a team, in my opinion, who desperately need to have a high lottery pick to get a really solid top prospect who they can build this franchise around. They have a lot of players that are veterans on long-term big money deals that are tough to move, and it's really going to be difficult, in my opinion, to put this team through any kind of a short rebuild given the circumstances of the cap and, like I said, with all the contracts. But drafting a player like Lundell would certainly go a long way, be somebody they could build around for the future. He has great vision, he's a great puck handling skills, great passing skills, and somebody who can play in all situations. He certainly would be a huge help to that Minnesota Wild forward group. Next up, the number 5 selection originally belonged to the San Jose Sharks, but now currently goes to the Ottawa Senators as part of that Karlsson trade, as I mentioned in the opener. We have them selecting center iceman Cole Perfetti, playing for Saginaw in the Ontario Hockey League. Cole Perfetti is a really dynamic player, really fun to watch. He's a very smart goal-scoring center iceman. He's got a wicked shot. He's a really intelligent player who creates a lot of offense. Some scouts say he could certainly continue to work on his skating a little bit to become a little bit more of an explosive skater. But overall, Cole Perfetti, I think, really has top six forward written all over him. Definitely a number one, number two center. It would go a long ways propelling this Ottawa Senators rebuild further ahead here. Next up, the number 4 selection belongs to the Detroit Red Wings, and we have them selecting Swedish forward Alexander HOLTZ, who's a very skilled offensive player. He's a true goal scorer, got a very impressive shot, very smart player, great vision. If he does have a weakness, though, it would be his skating. Not that it's really all that bad, but it's certainly not as strong as the players we have ranked ahead of him here. But Holtz would certainly be another prospect to add to that Red Wings prospect pool, who has some pretty high-end players there. It would be another piece of the puzzle to help get Detroit back on track. The number 3 selection would belong to the Los Angeles Kings, and they would be selecting 6'4" center from the OHL, Quinton Byfield. Now, Byfield's a player I can see by the end of the year possibly even moving up, maybe even going number 2 overall. Byfield's certainly a very interesting player, where he's the big center iceman and the 2 players ahead of him here are wingers, so certainly a little bit of a different dynamic, but he has a great mix of speed, skill, and strength. Certainly projects to be a number 1 center iceman, a top pivot on most NHL clubs once he's fully developed here. He will certainly be a huge difference maker for any team that's fortunate enough to draft the big center iceman, and I think he would be a great fit for the Los Angeles Kings to help get things turned around after a couple of struggling years for the Kings. Now, next up, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets picking number 2 overall. The Draft Simulator was very kind to them, and they moved up 7 spots based on the current NHL standings, where they have an opportunity to select Swedish forward Lucas Raymond. Raymond's a very well-rounded, highly skilled winger, a very exceptional hockey sense, great speed, terrific hands, strong defensively as well, is really tough to play against. I know opponents would certainly agree with that. He can be a very tenacious player, can play in a variety of situations, and certainly will project to be a very high-end winger at the NHL level. But once again, like I said, once we get deeper into the year and draft more on positional need, I guess we'll see who actually ends up picking in these spots. But I think Raymond and Byfield are certainly 2 players who potentially could end up trading spots, like I said, depending on who is selecting in what position. That leads us next to the number 1 overall selection, which puts us to the Ottawa Senators picking first overall, where they will select the consensus number 1 pick, Alexis Lafreniere. Now, Lafreniere is a very high-impact forward. He's been projected to be number 1 overall in this draft for quite some time. I don't see that changing as of right now. He's been on an absolute tear to start the season in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, putting up 43 points in his first 18 games played. Playing for the Rimouski Oceanic is, of course, the same team that Sidney Crosby played for. He's certainly their most dynamic player since Crosby was a part of that organization, and is certainly drawing some comparisons, not necessarily to the type of player he is, but to the type of stats and production that he's putting up for that team in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. He has the ability to control and dominate games. He's a very smart player. He's got great hands, has some physicality to his game. And even though he's a winger, I can see him having a big enough impact on any NHL franchise that's fortunate enough to draft him to be a franchise type of player that they can build around and really accelerate their growth. And in Ottawa's case, take their rebuild up a major step forward. If the Ottawa Senators were lucky enough to get the draft to go the way this simulator did today, and they were able to get Lafreniere and Cole Perfetti in the same draft, would certainly make up for not getting their first round selection last year, and it would really accelerate this rebuild and really propel things much further over the next couple of years. So here's just a quick recap for you. We have the Dallas Stars picking number 10, taking LAPIERRE. The Rangers go to number 9, taking German-born player Tim Stutzel. The Blackhawks pick at number 8, taking top defenseman Jamie Drysdale. The Devils pick at number 7, taking the top goalie prospect Yaroslav Askarov. The Minnesota Wild have their first selection in this draft lottery in some time, picking at number 6, taking Anton Lundell. The San Jose Sharks unfortunately have to give up their selection to the Senators, who are lucky enough to select Cole Perfetti at number 5. The Detroit Red Wings select Swedish player Alexander HOLTZ at number 4. The LA Kings take the big center iceman Quinton Byfield at number 3. The very lucky Columbus Blue Jackets move up all the way to number 2 to select Swedish winger Lucas Raymond at number 2. And then the Ottawa Senators pick number 1 overall and take top pick Alexis Lafreniere. So that is your top 10 selections for the 2020 NHL Draft based on the Draft Simulator, like I said, based on the current NHL standings and based on the current draft rankings. Of course, as always, I want to know your thoughts and opinions down below. Who do you think would most be deserving of the number 1 overall selection? Who would most benefit from having Alexis Lafreniere join their franchise and hopefully get things turned around? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.